today when we look at the types of threats, they're getting more and more sophisticated. 8-10 years ago, attacks would be individuals trying to compromise a system so they can make it a web server, or taking over a system to steal telephone numbers. Nowadays you have organized crime, you have foreign countries that are trying to steal information, break into your systems, take services offline so that your revenue is impacted or your security is impacted. The threats themselves are becoming more and more sophisticated, and they don't just attack, they actually understand what the environment is. They will, once a threat is compromised a system, it could sit there dormant for some time, then all of a sudden wake up and check the environment out, and then compromise another system. So they're very sophisticated. When we think about defense today, we have to think about a dynamic type of defense that can deal with this type of threat. With all the sophistication, we have to think more dynamically. We have to deal with these threats differently. It's not just government agencies that are at risk, national security is at risk. So there's been a lot of discussion around leveraging continuous monitoring and the automation and where that is going. And I was actually talking with an agency a few weeks back, and they were telling us about a situation where they had a breach and how much resources it took them to find out really where that breach came from. When you think of how the complexities of these breaches and these types of attacks, you know that it's not just one type of device. It's spreading throughout your infrastructure. So you have to bring in subject matter experts that understand each component of that. So they actually had 15 people that had been pulled off of projects and spent time researching and digging through logs and looking at trails to find out exactly where this attack came from. It ended up taking them over 13 weeks to determine really what had happened. That's not scalable. I mean, it's very resource intensive, very expensive. So when you look at the spirit of continuous monitoring, it is really just allowing you to get those kinds of feed and get that information that took them 13 weeks to get it automatically, and to be able to use that information to make risk-based decisions. When you're looking at solutions to provide continuous monitoring and to help you solve the problem of basically having gaps and not knowing what's going on in your environment, you need to look at it and have a solution that's going to actually allow you to categorize assets. You want to be able to categorize them by their severity. Are they critical assets? What type of missions do they support? Is it top secret data? So all types of different views you need to be able to categorize them, very similar to step 1 in the risk management framework. And then once you've categorized them, you need to be able to have an intelligent solution that will allow you to bubble up configuration data or vulnerabilities basically to the top that allow you to make a risk-based decision. So if you have them categorized and you know that there's a vulnerability or on this particular server or other type of device, and you know it's a critical asset, you know that you're going to spend your time focusing on that. So you need to have an intelligent solution that allows you to get that actionable data. And then you need to look at the monitoring frequency. When I talk to organizations, they say, okay, continuous monitoring, we're going to turn real time on everything and get fed a bunch of information. Well, if you can't deal with the information in the time frame that it's already being sent to you, cranking it up, even more isn't going to solve the problem. You have to go and think about it intelligently, and you need to say, okay, if I'm going to be monitoring an environment, do I need to monitor everything in real time? No. Critical assets, maybe I want to monitor the critical settings on those assets in real time. Maybe I want to look at logs on a daily basis. You have to look at the severity or the criticality, I should say, of that particular environment and those particular settings. Not all settings are the same, so you got to think about how you set your frequency up. So, in the final step is really providing information, reports, views, details that are going on in your environment to an authorizing official, so that allows them to make true risk-based decisions. So we've talked about how cyber threats are evolving. We've talked about how continuous monitoring is a mandated approach. So what's the problem that Tripwire really solves? It's really twofold. Tripwire helps you detect threats in near real time, and then also provides you the intelligence that allows you to prevent such attacks in the future. So when you think about threats, when you think about attacks, there's really two types of threats. One is the known threats, and that's really all about your configuration management. How secure is my environment? How well and how hardened is my infrastructure? And then you have the unknown threats. And unknown threats is really just tracks that are left behind that can be detected by continuous monitoring. So you say, how does Tripwire do this? How are we solving this problem? And first off is we're going to help you by implementing security policies and standards. We ensure that they're implemented properly and tell you if they're not. And then in addition, be able to provide continuous monitoring in real time on all changes to critical settings. Could be out-of-band change that don't fall within a change management process. Could be a malicious user that's making changes. So all change across the board. And then finally, that unknown threat is being able to correlate log and security events with change in configuration data. And that's really where you're trying to get. You got to have something that brings all of those pieces together so that it bubbles up to the top, that information that allows you to make risk-based decisions. So in summary, Tripwire's automating this by implementing security controls, monitoring continuously in real time, and correlating log and security events across the infrastructure. Tripwire is a solution